final speaker for today is Patrick Griffin from the Montgomery Mechanics.
Thank you. So let me make sure that I know how to operate that thing. Okay, it works. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I'm going to talk today about palms of the Leeward Antilles and how it's a model for conservation success. Now, the first thing you're going to say, if you see that, you're going to say, Griffith, you're using a strong word there, the word model, right? Pretty serious business. This is what I get back from reviewers whenever I use that word in paper. They say, there's model organisms, like all this bacteria. Okay, so I'll walk it back a little bit and I'll say it's a really good example, right? It's not something that everybody has agreed to that we're going to use, but I feel like it's a model for my work, right? And why is that? 4 reasons, right? One is we have a full botanical understanding of the plant, right? Of the plant. Colin spent a good amount of time teaching us exactly about that yesterday. And as soon as I saw the title of his talk, I wanted to applaud. It's fantastic. Taxonomy is important, or actually essential for conservation. We need to have that. And so I use the word botanical just to be a little softer to the non-taxonomists. That's what I mean. The other thing is we have public involvement, which is critical. We've heard a lot of great examples of that. And I've got some examples as well. In situ protection is essential. We always want to see that happen, right? But here's the thing that botanic gardens are uniquely suited for, and that's ex situ conservation. Everybody in the room here, and everybody that you work with, we're really good at growing. We're really good at managing data. It's really kind of the main thing. Ties all this together in my view. So just to give you a little bit of information about where I'm at, this is Montgomery Botanical Center. It's in Miami, Florida. I see a lot of people here who have been there, and I want to make sure that all of you go there eventually. So you're all invited. Show up sometime. I will walk you around, show you all the palms, like that, things like that. Cool place. We are accredited as a national palm collection in the United States through the accrediting body that does such things. And the reason for that is we've spent quite a bit of time just working to develop palm collections. We're pretty serious about it. We've been exploring basically worldwide for palms. This is a map of provenance of the collections, includes both palms and cycads and some other plants, but the majority of it is palms and cycads. But these are all of the dots on the map represent an association with a record of a living plant at the garden. So those are all the places that we have represented. And it's kind of cool to look at this map. Oh, just one more thing about it. The red dots are historic, right? And the green dots are just the last decade, right, since 2015. So these are all the sort of recent things that we're doing. So we're staying active with this. We really want to continue to collect. And some of the studies that I've done have actually shown me that once you stop collecting, your garden starts immediately declining. So it's good to keep that up. But when you look at a map like this, there's really hundreds of stories on it, right? Each one of those dots, you made friends with somebody. You had something interesting happen. There's certainly a really great plant associated with it. So just to give you a few examples of some of the things that happen, something very important to talk about is permission, right? You always have to have permission when you're going after your plants. This is the most interesting kind of permission I've ever had to get. This is the king of Essaout, which is the kingdom that's located on the border of Senegal. And since we were collecting in that kingdom, we were brought before His Highness. And he granted permission. Here's a nice blessing. To be honest with you, I wish all of my permission seeking was like this. It was really fantastic. We fill out a lot of paper on this business form, online forms. The other thing, this is just an example of logistics, right? When you're getting out to where these plants are, the plants don't really locate themselves in convenient spots. You have to kind of get out there. We were very fortunate to locate this boat captain, and he had the only seaworthy vessel in the area, so we were able to get out to where the palms were. That worked out well. And plants, of course, right? This is what we're after. This is just a fun photo. I was super happy to see this in the wild last summer. This is a raphia, and a raphia is famous for having the longest leaf. So we measured this because you read it in the textbooks. And I thought, how long is that, right? We thought, for sure, it's got to be 80 feet or something. But this crowd thinks in meters. This was actually 18 meters, so pretty excited. We're actually using the petioles to collect fruits because it's longer than a pole saw, just the petiole part. Pretty cool thing. If you look carefully and squint, you can see me in the very back. That's how big it is. So anyway, what about this dot right here, or this set of dots, right? So this is one story that I just want to highlight here and go into a little more depth and talk about the process of collections development and how it relates to conservation. And it's a story about two new palmetto species. Okay. So these maps are cool. They're cool to look at when you're thinking about your collection and to communicate what it's like. But they're actually a really valuable planning tool. Because if you're trying to represent phytogeographic breadth, if you're looking at a map like that, you can think about where do I want to go and develop a new collection, right? So I was looking at this map one day, and back in 2016, I think it says on it, and I noticed, hey, we don't have a single plant in the Netherlands Antilles, right? This is part of the Caribbean. I think what's been great about this meeting is everybody shows a map of where they are in the Caribbean. This is a map of where this project is, right? And I think it's a part of the Caribbean that hasn't been talked about at any of these meetings. It's been coming since that year, 2016. So I thought, got to be some interesting stuff there. So just started digging up, looking at the literature. And you look at what's written about palms on that island, or that set of islands, and there's very, very little written and very, very little known. This is about the only thing I could find initially. This is in a textbook about biogeography of the island, right? And look at that cool picture, right? So I look at palms all day. I think a lot of us do, which is cool. But when I saw that, I thought, okay, he's calling it an indigenous sable palm, right? To me, it looks like nothing like any sable palm I've ever seen. And sable palms are quite common in Florida in cultivation, many different species. So I thought it's kind of cool. What is it, right? Well, according to this author, he says, well, we don't really know what it is. They call it a CF causiorum. And you botanists in the room, you know what that means, right? It means we think maybe it's causiorum, but we don't know what it is, right? And it goes on there, and if you read some of the fine print, it talks about how it's definitely indigenous, but nobody knows what it is. So what are we supposed to do with that, right? Well, what I did was I just looked on the internet. The internet is awesome because people post their vacation photos, right? So you can just kind of see what's happening. Here's a photo, right? It's beautiful architecture and landscape. But of course, what are we looking at, right? This audience. Look at that strange looking plant. So weird, right? You can see people go on vacation, they go up on this hill. It's a really relaxed kind of vibe with that trunk, right? But look at that. It's just so strange looking compared to other sables. To me, it was strange because you can't see through the ground. Usually on sables, you can see some air behind it. This is the photo that really got me hooked on wanting to know about this, because you look at this, it's a rocky slope, hardly anything on it at all. And there's these sort of pachycol palms that are growing on it. And then behind it is a Caribbean. So what a cool spot. I'd like to go see that. But of course, there's more research to do before you do any of these things. And there's a world expert on this, and it's this guy named Scott Zona. And a lot of us maybe know Scott, but he wrote the book basically on sables. I thought, let's see what Zona has to say about it. Zona mentions Curacao, okay? But he only mentions it one time. And here's what he says. What does he say? He says it's Sable mauritiiformis, right? It occurs on Curacao. So I'm thinking, well, this mystery is getting deeper, right? Sable mauritiiformis, that's a palm that Santiago has growing in the garden here, right? And it totally doesn't look like any of these photos. So I thought, okay, this is weird. That's a living collection of Sable mauritiiformis. Now, is there a botanist in the room? Somebody tell me, is that the same species? No, it's not. It's not. But certainly, I didn't think it was. So pretty interesting. But Scott is a great academic because what he does is he blames it on somebody else. And that's what citation is, right? He says, no, Vessel's Bower said it was Sable mauritiiformis. It's like, okay, let's see what Vessel's Bower has to say about it, right? Turns out Vessel's Bower made this specimen. It's at New York Botanical Garden, and it's great because as soon as you look at it, you know it's not Sable mauritiiformis, right? Totally different. There's some technical stuff I can get into, but it's not, right? So there's one other really awesome document, and it's this master's thesis from the late 70s, right? This is a young lady named Winkleman. She studied these in depth and looked at them like, really, really fine scale. And she looked at it on both the island of Curacao and in Bonaire. This only exists at one library, it's in the Netherlands. So through a university that I'm affiliated with, I contacted Interlibrary Loan and said, I need this thesis. This is like, I couldn't sleep until I got it, really. I mean, it's very interesting. And the guy said, well, it's our policy that we cannot provide a scan of an entire thesis. But he sent me the table of contents page, right? He said, you let me know what pages you want. And I looked at it. It was a 16-page document. And I said, sir, may I please have pages 1 through 16? And I said, yeah, no problem. I sent it to him. So I got it. Now, of course, this is in Dutch. Okay, so I had to translate this manually. I don't know. Does anybody speak Dutch? Where were you? I need this help. So armed with all of that information, I went from Miami to Curacao to check this thing out. So of course, ahead of that, I got in touch with the National Park System there. This is Carmabi, great organization. They manage the entire National Park System, which has a huge amount of like reefs that are protected, but also some terrestrial stuff. And they gave me access to Christopherberg. This is a really cool place. It's the highest mountain in that chain, of islands. You can go up there. It's beautiful. But where I was headed was the other side of it, which is not open to the public. So talked with them. They gave me permits and they gave me a key so that I could go through their special gate here and make it over. You're laughing. This is at an obstacle. It's not easy to get past it. Right? So I went up there, and it kind of goes up to like some utility stuff. And then saw the first palms. Hard to see it. That's what it was like for me. Sun's in my eyes. I really couldn't see it. So I turned around so I could look at it the other way with the sun, and there it was, right? So I got to tell you, it was super exciting because instantly I knew this was not a described species of palm, right? And palms are big, showy things. You think all of them would have been described many, many years ago. But for some reason, this one wasn't. As a botanist, that's a thrilling feeling. And I know many of you in the room have felt that way. New thing for science. So it's also strange because it grows in a really windy spot that's super dry. It's almost like a desert palm. And sables typically don't do that. So that's kind of cool. But far and away, the thing that stands out is that compact mouth, right? It's opaque. You can't really see through it, right? It's different than a lot of sable plants. And this is something cool that we'll talk about later. Christoffel Park, around these palms, there's seedlings all over the place. Lots and lots of sables. They're all recruiting. They don't need my help. It's great. So, just some technical differences here, right? So you see that the one on the left there, that's the one from Curacao. Got that short petiole, and the leaf blade is actually longer than the petiole. Sable causing arm is what they said in that textbook, right? Totally different. Right? And look at those arches. This is the coolest character. On the leaf blade, it's got all those little arches. On causing arm, it's one arch. So, of course, I had to make a specimen, right? We talked at length about it. I was so happy to hear people talking about herbaria. So I made a specimen and spent some time making more parts and more specimens. I think I made 3 or 4 specimens. We got short petioles. Really cool. Of course, you got to get the reproductive parts too. But this is also important because I had permission to grow these things in the garden. So I got a bunch of seeds, different sessions, clean, dried, getting ready to ship home. But even the seeds look good. Look at those giant seeds, right? Causing arm is like a small seed. Spend an extra day documenting habitat. Then I went over to Bonaire because Winkleman said it grows there, right? But she said in her thesis there's only 2. So I thought, okay, I'll spend a little bit of time. So got in touch with those guys ahead of time, of course. Went to the government office. That's the hand of the government, right? The hand of the government official, pointing at the spot where I'm supposed to go and telling me you can go there. So that constitutes my permit to go to that spot. So that's great. So I went there, and sure enough, this is what I saw on the way, right? So obviously this is the correct place to go, right? Sable Palm Villas. But look at this guy, right? Okay. So we'll talk about him later. Anyway, I just want you to see this. It's kind of something to see. So I made a specimen from Bonaire. There it is. That's the plant. So it's kind of interesting. Something that you see in Bonaire, and Winkleman wrote about this. It's got these, all the palms, the older ones, have these steps that are carved into the trunk. So if you look at that, that's from people carving those that can go up into like thatch, right? And this was a big problem in her era, 40, 45 years ago. palms were dying because of overharvest. Not an issue anymore. People are not using it for batch, but I was alarmed to see that the notches are still there. I guess they're always. Then, of course, I had to get them home, right? So here is a holotype, and it's a New York botanical garden. I think Gordon went and said it's you give it to the herbarium and say, take care of this forever, and you give them nothing, right? Well, thank you, New York botanical garden. I really appreciate that because this is important, and I'm sure it's going to be there 1,000 years. It's a really stable place, and I love it. So I was very glad that it's in that over there. And that's now a new taxon, right? It's a stable Antilles. They put it on the cover of Phytotaxon. That's a lot of fun, you know, if you work at the kindergarten, you can show that to donors. Hey, but what is that, right? That's what we were talking about at the beginning. That's part of that full botanical understanding, right? We want to kind of know what these things are and be able to put a name on it in order to get people interested in it and make it so that we can communicate what they are. And it's associated with the specimen, as we heard Jordan say. So what about that specimen from Bonaire, right? This is Griffith 392, okay? I don't collect an awful lot, numbers are kind of low, but Griffith 392, right? So what happened to that one? Well, if you look at the permits for shipping to the United States, you have to have a separate box for your specimen and a separate box for your seeds. No big deal, I do it all the time, right? So I got these ready to ship home. And it's got everything you need. Here's the permit, special inspection label, customs, right? I told the guys I need customs. Yeah, no problem. We got customs. I said, I need tracking information. Okay? Because of course, I'm not going to sleep until I see these things. You know that, right? So, of course, as soon as I got back to Miami, that's what I got. You probably can't read it, but it says, we don't have information about that number, right? And it was like that for a month. And after a while, you know, I was checking it several times a day. This is an important specimen, right? Life goes on, of course. You work at a botanic garden, you have many, many things to do all the time. So eventually I forgot about it. But then this is what we get in the US if they have a package that they somehow found somewhere, right? And said, oh, hey, we have your package. So I went over to the post office. And okay, first thing you notice, right? How many packages do I have? I only got one package, right? But I had two. What happened? The seeds are gone. They're at the bottom of the ocean somewhere. I don't know where they are. But anyway, it's very strange. I didn't address this to myself. It's addressed to Dr. Michael Griffith, right? So what? Somebody changed that, right? It went through this thing called the mail recovery scheme. I never even heard of it. But anyway, I went back and looked at my permit. You really gotta be up on these permits, and you gotta read the fine print. You gotta familiarize yourself with it because there's a lot of pitfalls. And if you read what the USDA will do to you, okay, if you break the rules, they're gonna put you in prison, okay? They're gonna fine you huge amounts of money, and you will never ever get another permit from USDA. Right? So I'm like, I can't open this, right? And I told the guy, the postal service guy, he kind of gets close and goes, take the box and take it, right? I'm like, all right, fine. So I do, and then I call the USDA and I said, look, here's my situation. Can I just bring this up there and you'll open it? They're like, yeah, of course. So I brought it to the USDA. It didn't open it. I really wanted to open it. Believe me, I've been thinking about it every day. Okay? But you know, you get to know these guys. That's Inspector Irving, the best inspector, and he opened it for me. And can you imagine what it would look like? Think about this, right? 7 weeks. Who knows what temperature is at, right? Look at that. Okay. This was, we were just talking about compost, right? So that's what we're looking at. It's a specimen, right? Because it's got information and stuff, but it looks more like compost. It was sealed in a plastic bag and it wasn't cool. Didn't have time. So anyway, what do you do? What do you do? So there's actually methods to deal with it. Just dry it with rubbing alcohol. Put it in place of so anyway, I have a specimen now. This is cool because it is my ugliest specimen that I've ever made over the course of my career. At the same time, it is the most important specimen I've ever made, right? Because I have looked at every herbarium that I come across, all the ones online. This plant has never been collected on the island of Palm. It's the only time. So I encourage you to collect palms. People don't do it. That's a lot of work. And then all those seeds from Curacao, right? So we have a bunch of seeds from Curacao. Here's over 100 seedlings. This is exciting. They're growing in the nursery. It's great. On that herbarium, remember my seed box is gone, right? But on that herbarium specimen, I have 8 little seeds, right? So I took those over to the nursery and babied them. But first, I'll tell you about this. We planted these already in government. Okay. So this is kind of cool. We had a school group come out and see the concept. These are now taller than a person, right? These are big plants, and they're growing very rapidly. They're great garden. Super excited. So what is that? What do we do, right? We had a little bit of public involvement, right? Brought a school group out here, told them about the plant, how cool it was. But that's really the important outcome right there, right? We're beginning to develop an ex situ collection of these plants, which is important. So I told you I babied those 8 fruits, right? And I got 1 plant. So 7 weeks in a plastic bag. Yeah, I don't want to think about it. But anyway, this thing came out of it. So I had my 1 plant, and I was super excited. So I want to ask you all, what would you do in a situation like this, right? Should I go back? Should I develop some more plants? Are you on the fence about this? Right? I really want to go back, right? So in fact, I did go back. I went back 2 years later, and I went over to the Bonnier, and by way of Curacao. This time I knew more about the phenology, so I was able to get there at exactly the right time. This is an exciting thing if you're collecting plants. You look at the thing and you see the fruits are bright. So it's do a little bit more at that time. So, and then over to Bonnier, right? I had to go to Bonnier. Got there late, but I couldn't wait, so I had to go over and look. So I went over and saw them. That's what they look like, kind of on the horizon there. It's kind of sharp limestone, so I didn't want to walk out in the light. So I very patiently waited for the sleepless night for the sun to come up. And that's what I saw. Okay. So it looks like an obstacle, right? I want to tell you, it is absolutely an obstacle. We're going to talk about why that's an obstacle. I mean, it didn't move out of the way as I walked over, but you know what I mean. So I worked with the local botanist, right? It's a guy named Karine Cool. He is the guy. If you're going to go to Bonnier, he knows all the plants, and he's great to work with. So we did a full conservation survey, and the way we did it was we read Winkleman, right, the 1979 paper. And we did it exactly the same way Winkleman did. We're using 70s technology. Actually, we did a Winkleman style survey and counted every single palm on the island and got map data and a little help notes and stuff like she did. Then I sent my intern over to Curacao to do the same thing, and she linked up with a group of students from the Netherlands, and they did the same thing on Curacao while I was there. Again, following the Winkleman system. So that was pretty cool because we have basically a 40-year time frame for which we can compare those 2 data sets. What did that comparison teach us, right? So what do you see when you look at this figure, right? Okay, we got Curacao at the bottom, Bonnier at the top. See how the ranges have changed? So what happened? Right, so it's Curacao, that range has absolutely exploded, right? It's just like, it's doing great. It really doesn't need anything from Patrick Griffith at all. But Bonnier, look how the range of it is absolutely collapsed, right? It's just a shell of its former range in 40 years. And the reason for that difference is plants in Curacao are inside a national park that was created just about the time Winkleman did their thesis. They built a fence and they removed herbivores, right? And those pictures from Bonnier, they certainly did neither of those things, right? There's herbivores walking around all the time, there's evidence for herbivores everywhere, and there's no fence, right? That's why you see it that way. And then here's the data. This is all the counts we did. You can see 40 years, the population in Bonnier is going down. And the numbers are already small, and now they're going down. But look at that big success in Curacao, right? We got to get rid of those little creatures. And, you know, listen, they're cute, and they're considered a mascot. It's a lot of fun to see them. Everybody likes them, right? But they are super predators. So we thought, okay, this is something that we need to let them know. So we told the Bonnier government about this through a very simple communication. We did a little report, Ryan and I, sent it to the Bonnier government and said, well, thanks for letting us know. We had no idea. It's kind of off our radar. We'd love to protect those. We were pretty excited about that. What is that? Remember I kind of talked about 4 things at the beginning? Anybody remember? This is a type of public involvement, right? And I think this is a very important type of public involvement where you get authorities involved and get them to do what they need to do to mobilize whatever kind of in situ protections they can do. did write up a study. We published it. They put it on the cover of Palms. So we're excited about that. Then, of course, life goes on, but I'm always looking for plants. Yeah, so I'm in the garden looking at a screen all day, but I go to the nursery, I check these out. They look different, right? Okay. So I'm looking at the one from Bon Air, and it kind of looks different than the one from Curacao, right? So what do you think? We have botanists in the room, right? What? Different species? Okay, a taxonomist just said they're different species. That's all I needed, right? With that opinion right there. So, we like to look at leaflet anatomy, same kind of thing. But the thing about botanists these days is they actually require you to do this. I'm just kidding. They don't require you to do DNA. But, naysayers are out there sometimes. They're like, well, you didn't do a DNA test, so it's not a new species. But I disagree with that. But I have to say, just to please everybody, I did what they call a DNA test. This is a genomic diversity. When I came up, it was genetics. Now we're doing genomics. So the two islands are different, right? The palms and the islands. They're quite separated. And that's a little statistic, FST. You know what that means? It just means they're pretty different, and they're different enough to be species. So that's kind of cool. So we published a new species. This is now Sable lahidiana. So again, we're getting back to this idea of full botanical understanding, right? The other thing, as soon as the ink was dry in that publication, I kept pushing to get this thing red listed, right? And I'm very, very thankful to the Palm Specialist Group because they got this out very rapidly. That motivates government action. If you don't have that, really nothing happens. And I did get my seeds. This is me walking out of the airport, happy times. But this is something I always do. I like to see if the ex situ collections match with the plants in the field. And we can see that in Bon Air, we're doing pretty good, right? We're matching that diversity. We have some additional work to do in Curacao, right? To represent the full range. This is something you maybe have heard me talk about meta collections. I think it's important to share these things among different gardens, right? And so how's that safe for meta collection? If you look at it, right, the most endangered ones are at the fewest sites. It's a very simple sort of a gap analysis. And the two that we're talking about here, they're only at one. They're each of them is only at one garden. Guess which garden that is, right? It's mine. And so that responsibility is on me. It's my problem. I need to make sure these are shared widely. So talk to me about that. Especially this guy, critically endangered, right? Must be shared widely. So we talked to, is that? Yeah. So we talked to Seacology, and this is a great organization. And they gave us money to build a fence, which is what we needed at the beginning, right? So we built that fence, right? You see it's a low-tech solution, but it works exactly the way it's supposed to. See the palm on the other side? Donkeys on the other side? In situ protection is happening, right? It's a small island, so if you build a fence like that, it's a big deal. So we actually had a community event. These are local government officials and the local TV station, okay, talking about the fence. So this is exciting. This guy is the finance minister for the island of Bon Air. And he said, why didn't you build a bigger fence? And I said, I didn't have money. And he said, why didn't you talk to me? So anyway, he's going to help us out. This is now part of the national conservation plan for the southern half of the island. If you squint, you can see they borrowed my figure. So I'm really happy about that. So public involvement is happening and in situ protection is happening. Went back last summer. These are the funders for the fence. And I want to tell you, if you have a palm that is in trouble and it's on an island, these are the guys to talk to. I'm very happy to put you in touch with them. They're super excited about how effective this was. It's working the way it's supposed to. You can see that plants grow on the inside, not the outside. This is a new thing, right? There were no seedlings back before we built that fence. Now there's seedlings. There's one that's even a little bit bigger. And look at this, local nursery. They're growing tons and tons of these. I'm excited because in the future, this is going to be planted in everybody's neighborhood in Bon Air. Super exciting. And at this point, we have the Dutch military involved, okay? This is great. These guys have to do some training. So we thought, okay, let's connect them with this NGO in Bon Air. They're digging holes in the limestone so we can plant more of these. So super exciting. So is this a model for conservation success? I think it is, but how? Those four things, right? We had that full botanical, taxonomic understanding, public involvement, in situ protections, and ex situ safeguarding. Huge thanks to everybody who helped out. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrick. That one definitely. We're gonna take an ending for today. I know you all probably do have questions that I would ask you to do it on the way out. We do have a few wrap up things that we do.
Questions? Yes, Patrick. I'm sure there are questions.
Thanks for this amazing example, conservation. And it's a pleasure to see you again. I saw you in the APGA also with another very interesting topic, meta collections. And again, another comment about the role that the conservation ways, the ways to evaluate, to assess the status of the species. In this case, you're mentioning that a new species that you already know that is critically endangered. You mentioned that you can't do anything in a legal, like more powerful with action way without having it in the list. You can do it through this very important consortia of Magnolia, Oak, and the other ones that have been participating. I think that they are the only two tool that we have right now. But in your opinion, do you think you should assess this new species the same way it has been doing for the last decades, or we should have it to account another new criteria very urgently?
What a great question. My opinion, and my opinion doesn't matter, but since you asked that question, I think that you should assess it exactly the same way as the normal IUCN framework, but IUCN's species information system should just be a little faster. That's really it, because I was excited to get this thing out, and I know anybody else who sees these critically endangered new species, the information is there and they have it. It's just a matter of like getting it published, and as soon as it shows up there, then you can mobilize the governments. Great question, thank you.
Any more questions? No? Just one comment, Patrick. The Saval mauritiformis is the main thatch plant of the Colombian Caribbean region. That's what people have traditionally, since before the Spanish conquerors, were thatching their houses with palmiche.